Thanks for tuning in for another episode of Will Work for Patients, a free advice podcast dedicated to help chiropractors get on purpose and grow their practices. Get ready to tune in and turn up the volume of your practice marketing. And now, turning up the volume on his mic, big-time chiropractic advocate and your host, here is Frank Sardella.
Episode 14. Still in Clearwater, folks. Well, thank you, Michelle, for another memorable introduction. Isn't she great, you guys? She's so genuinely cool to have her as part of the show. Michelle, if you're listening, we love you to pieces here on the show. Thanks so much for that introduction. I'm Frank Sardella, and I'm so happy to be with you here again today in our podcast show. This show is free for you to not only give you marketing help in your practice, but to keep you on purpose, to keep you pumped up, and to keep you going. And that's my commitment in a grassroots effort to make a chiropractic world. So welcome. Hello, all you minions of the movement. That's right, I mean you. Even you newcomers to the show, you know who you are. So do I. So what did you guys think about that episode 13, huh? Winston Gao? He's pretty freaking cool, isn't he? Make sure you reach out and you contact him if you haven't already. And make sure you check out all of our social media, our Facebook page, Twitter, Google+, all of that. We put lots of stuff. GoBeyondOrganic.com, I believe, was his website for more information about him. And again, you can always contact me through frank.screenings@live.com. I'd be more than happy to put you in touch with him. You need to talk to this man. He's just very fascinating, and I'm sure that he can give you some tools that you can use to prospect more intensively with your practice. So now, I know I try to avoid when we have a guest the social media campaigns, but I gotta plug this photo campaign, guys. We've gotten such cool photos from you, so please continue to send us photos. Those of you who haven't, your cardboard signed photos will work for patients. The campaign is brilliant. We're having so much fun. We have quite a collection. If you haven't joined in, you are missing out on all the fun. That's all I can say. And speaking of photos, I just want to send a shout out to my good friend Leslie Drewitz, who is now what I would call my personal photographer. She's an artistic genius, flyaway photography. I'll probably chirp about it a bit on social media, so watch out for that. But she is an artistic genius. I just want to thank Leslie for taking the time to take me on location just outside of Clearwater here over by Tampa to someplace called Ybor City, where we did a number of headshots, like a sort of a photo shoot. And if you've never been to Ybor City, what a treat. You should get there sometime if you're ever down in the area. All kinds of old brick industrial type buildings and quaint restaurants, and such appeal. So we'll be posting her work and the headshots that she took of me soon. Thanks so much, Leslie. I just feel in really capable hands. But listen, folks, don't let her professional work deter you from sending your amateur pictures with your cardboard signs, okay? So come on, let's show your spirit. So, you're probably never going to believe this, but do you know what I'm going to say? That's right. You guessed correctly. We have quite an episode planned for you here. Quite an episode. Now, on the coattails of no passion, no patience, right? And in the spirit of why we're always prospecting with our screenings, our talks, our advertising, little is often said about internal sales. Okay, I'm always giving you guys the benefit of the doubt on your skills. And if anybody asks me, I always tell them that you guys got mad skills if you can just get the people through the door. And I have been sort of inflating your numbers to say you're at least 80% once someone arrives, and oftentimes that's true, but have I been a little too liberal, too kind to you guys? Well, if so, we're going to fix that right now. Okay, so today's episode is entitled, Shut Up, You Talk Too Much. And appropriately so. Definitely an appropriate, if attractive and well thought out as usual, title. You guys know I always lure you in with those attractive titles, but today we have a special guest that's going to help you in your journey out into your community, to help you with the end of that journey, let's say, where you have that dreaded sales pitch for the dreaded close for a corrective care plan in your clinic. Okay? And the man we're going to get into it with today is just the go-to guy. And I'm going to grill this guy for you guys within an inch of his experience, and you're going to see what he can do to help you convert, and we're going to make him do that for us today, okay? So what are we going to talk about? Well, first we're going to talk about how to find a prospect, which folds right into what we've been talking about in this show. Remember, a screening is just prospecting, and you want to be able to look around you. This guy's going to show you how to find a prospect. And then once you've got those prospects, how do you talk to them? Well, this is sort of the main point of our podcast. It's been the main point of my coaching for almost 20 years now. And there is an essence to this. And when this prospect arrives, we know all about talking to them out in public and doing screenings and talks and things, but what about when the prospect arrives in your office? He's still a prospect. So we're going to get into how to talk to that prospect, and then he's going to take us through what he calls 8 steps every prospect goes through, and I'm very interested in these. He's told me a couple things about it, and I'm very, very intrigued, as will you be. And then we're going to get a little bit into the technology that he developed and how he sort of approaches getting people, I guess, sort of over themselves and really into an area of ability to be able to do this and really close, okay? And, of course, if that wasn't enough for an action-packed episode for you, of course, we're going to have for you a top 10 list today. You know I can't let you down. So let's get on with it. Today's guest, he is beyond fascinating. He's an internationally published author, and if that wasn't enough, he just happens to be, in my opinion, the top expert on sales. I had an opportunity to speak with him where he had given a presentation, and he sat down after the meeting and he gave me a rundown of exactly what he does and sort of what the crux of his whole method is and whatever, and he just sort of blew my mind. But his technology of sales, what he does, I've been at absolute awe about his methods and abilities ever since, okay? I've been dying to get him on the show, and he was among the top few on my agenda as soon as I arrived to Florida. Absolutely insisted that he come here on the show. His latest book, Listen More, Sell More, is nothing outside of pure genius, if you ask me, and the search is over in terms of a solution to getting those prospects converted to new patients galore. Okay? As usual, I'm gushing. I could go on and on. So let me just let the man speak for himself. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce you my special guest on Will Work for Patients today, Mr. Ron Kule. Ron, welcome to the show.
Hi, Frank. I'm happy to be here.
Hey, good. I'm glad you are. I hope that wasn't a little too much of a build-up for you, and I don't recall if I cautioned you that I gush a little bit, so I hope you're not, blushing or any of that kind of stuff. Hope you can handle that.
Well, the truth is I've had a 39-year sales and sales management and sales training career, so
nothing can shake it.
I don't think you did use too much hyperbole.
Okay, good. I like that. Confidence, folks. There's the first thing you're going to take away from this. Well, that's good. Well, I'm really happy to have you here. Listen, I did, as good of a build-up as I could, and, my introductions tend to be a little bit sort of a summation of the higher points of your career in terms of, like, how it's going to relate to the show. But I usually like to let the guest sort of speak for himself, so maybe you could tell us from your point of view a little bit about yourself and your track and, that kind of thing.
Sure. I'd be happy to do that. First of all, a lot of times when I stand up to speak in front of a group, first thing I'll do is I'll mention how to spell my name, because you mentioned my name is Ron Kule, and that's Kule.
Yes.
And it actually is Polish. It comes from my father's name was Sikulski. My great-grandfather was a Polish immigrant through Ellis Island in New York.
No kidding.
And came from Poland. And when my father and his brothers joined the Navy in World War II, the Navy cut the name down from Sikulski to Kule. So they were Sikulskis, and I was always Kule. So that goes along very well with my sales career.
That's fantastic, and what a great name. I find you quite cool anyway. So. Well,
thank you. I'm also probably the only Polish Colombian that your listeners will ever. I was born in Bogota, Colombia, one of 8 kids, and I'm the only one born there.
Wow.
Because my mother was Chilean Colombian and my father was an American citizen in the Navy. And he was told my mother was told by her wealthy parents, if you marry the gringo, you don't get the money. So she married him anyway, and we didn't grow up rich.
No, no kidding. Wow, that's quite amazing. I'm actually just sitting here. I'm like, wow, I would like to be at one of your family gatherings and see what the food would be like. Should be quite interesting.
That's great.
I'm trying to imagine Colombian, Chilean, and mixed with kielbasa or something.
Yeah, exactly. You could stuff kielbasa into the empanadas, which are like turnover sandwiches.
Ah, there you go. Yeah, they're sort of shaped like pierogies, actually. So.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. So that's great. It's a sort of a Spanish pierogi. Well, good. Well,
yeah.
Well,
my
thanks
brother
for that.
and I used to sit in this tall tree in Santiago back in 1953, and we'd take the olives out and throw them out, and then we'd eat the empanada.
Wow, fantastic. I love it. So we have some culture here. Thanks for bringing some culture to our show, and you're making us very international, very multinational, actually. So that's great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for that little bit of background on you. Very interesting. If you forgive me, I just want to sort of jump right into the show, Ron, because we're here to pick your brain today. And I know the listeners are pretty excited for the content. So first order of business, we usually start with the top 10 list. I want to tell everybody I'm sort of keeping precedent here with the last few guest episodes. We've been inviting our guests to do a top 10 list, and I think it's becoming a hard, fast rule that to come on the show, the guest absolutely has to come up with a top 10 list relevant to the subject at hand. So, Ron, thanks for your help with this. So, folks, we have one especially cooked up for you by Ron today, and I'm introducing it right now. The top 10 worst things to do to try and make a sale. Isn't that outstanding? Ron, I'm so excited to give this one. This is going to be awesome.
It should be fun.
Yeah, fun. That's the word. Absolutely. All right, let's jump into it. Number 10, never contact anyone. Now, this one sounds like a little oversimplified to me. Do you have any comments on that, Ron?
Well, it's like basically, I mean, prospects are all around you. So if you don't contact anybody at all, I mean, it's like those little monkeys, see no evil, hear no evil, and so forth.
Yes, that's right.
You just never make a sale.
Yeah, that's true. So a little bit of an obvious one, but nevertheless, I guess you have to keep the most basic points in first. So never contact anyone. Okay, number 9, speak to the wall, not to the prospect. You must have a reason you said this.
Yeah, exactly, because a lot of salespeople, what they do is they just like go on and on and on. It's like just talking and not paying attention to whether or not the other person's listening. So it's like talking to a wall. It's not going to get you any results.
That's true. That's true. I guess the picture I get is like the words actually going through the person you're talking to and hitting the wall behind him or something. Okay, number 8, slur your words. Wow. You wouldn't think you would have to say this one, but I'll bet, man, people don't even notice they're doing this, huh?
Absolutely. I mean, it just, if you remember, this is a list of the 10 things that you really shouldn't do to make a sale. So
yeah, this is true.
Slurring your words, just
for sure.
Just have really poor diction. Nobody will ever understand.
Yeah,
you.
that's true. I've seen plenty of that in my time. We've had to undo a little bit of that. In our travels. Number 7, this one, Ron, I want to thank you profusely for this one because this is so relevant to this industry, it's not even funny. Listen up, you Kairos. Use PhD vocabulary. And you're dealing with PhDs here. You're dealing with doctors. And boy, do they love to pull out the vocabulary. Let me tell you. Comments, Ron?
Well, yeah, no kidding. I mean, I've had doctors talk to me, and I've been at doctors' seminars, and they just say all these words, assume that everybody's had the same education they had. And
absolutely.
Wow. I mean, just go ahead and do that and see how many sales you'll make.
Absolutely, yeah. When these guys go out, they tend to put up displays and things like that, and they even put the words, they sort of pepper them into their marketing pieces and all that kind of stuff, so it sort of like pervades their whole existence. So this one is a little bit... Well, it hits home. And
it's actually super important, Frank, because if you don't communicate on the level of the person that you're speaking to, whether it be a 8-year-old child or a blue-collar worker versus a PhD kind of person, then you're not going to win friends and influence people.
Got it. Good point. Okay, number 6, accept whatever the prospect tells you. That one's a little bit, give us a little insight on that one. That's an interesting one to me.
Oh, well, it kind of comes into the point of where they say, well, give me your card and I'll think about it. Yeah. If you take that as the first no, well, you're going to lose some sales because sometimes you do have to press forward.
Yeah, and I think a lot of our people out there, what they're doing when they're doing sales and doing that is, it's almost like because they're a little bit nervous about the sales process, they might be a little inclined to take this as sort of a rip card, like, oh, thank goodness that's over, and sort of run away, Good excuse to run away.
Exactly.
All right,
exactly.
So moving on, number 5, walk away, ticked off or PO'd. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great way to put down your prospect,
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Just go out with
frustrated
your tail up high, your head up high, your arrogant nose stuck way up in the clouds, and that'll really make them feel great.
Really?
Want to do business with you.
I thought that was a good sales technique. I guess not, huh? I stand corrected on that one. So, okay. We'll leave that one to the obvious. Okay, number 4, leave your prospect ticked off. So that's a little bit similar, but you're actually sort of getting the guy angry and leaving him there.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, I'm also, in these two, have to do with both sides of the communication. I mean, there's communication when it comes to selling. And if you get ticked off and you walk away ticked off, well, you're going to leave your prospect ticked off too.
I agree.
Or if you You might be like really Mr. Nice Guy, but if you say something that's really offensive to them for some reason or other,
Sure.
and you leave them ticked off, well, then you're dead in the water.
Okay, well, I'm certainly going to stop leaving people ticked off myself after that. I'm definitely convinced. All right, number 3, decide not to sell after the prospect is already convinced, I guess, to buy, huh?
Well, this has to do with like salespeople talking themselves out of a sale that's obviously right in front of them. The sales prospect has actually made the decision.
Sure.
They're going to get the product, and you just decide, well, I can't make the sale here, and you quit.
Wow. Wow. That's, yeah, you know what? I think you hit it right on the head with that one. I'm going to let it rest on what you said. And number 2 is actually one of my favorites on this list because it's such one of those obvious right under your nose ones, but never ask for the sale. What you're talking about here is like endlessly pitching, yeah?
Endlessly pitching from 2 points of view, getting so nervous that you just keep talking and talking and talking and talking and talking because you can't stand the silence. Mm-hmm. Whereas talking because you're so interesting and you're so interested in yourself and not your prospects, so you're just trying to be interesting, no connection.
Right. And that probably relates to, one of the earlier points where you sort of go right past the sale and you don't even realize the guy was closed or something. You probably just missed the whole thing. Like missing your exit on the Autobahn or something. You're going 110 and you didn't see the exit.
Exactly.
Yeah, great point. Okay, and the number one worst thing you can do to try and make a sale is, Ron, I'm going to let you read this one.
Never let the prospect speak.
Ooh, like the biggest cardinal sin of all, huh? Never letting them speak.
That's right. That's why the name of my book is Listen More, Sell More.
I knew there was rhyme and reason to this list. That's good. Very, very clever man, folks. Well, good. Well, you know what, Ron, let's just sort of jump into this because I'm very, very anxious to get into this. I told the listeners the first thing we were going to get into was a little bit about prospecting and sort of how to find the prospect, and we wanted to give them a new viewpoint. As you know, my company, we specialize in like screenings and also referral resources and things like that, so there's a lot of direct face-to-face type of prospecting that we do. But also these principles apply a lot in advertising and all that other kind of stuff, the prospecting process, as does the sales process to a degree. So we're constantly teaching them to get out there and find innovative, places and whatever, but it's always good to get someone else's perspective on like how to find a prospect, especially from someone who needs to prospect as the salesman himself. So maybe you can share your wisdom, so to speak, on this.
Well,
yes?
I could give a quick little story here, Frank.
Sure.
One night I was selling door-to-door to offices. I was selling boxes of steaks, and I hadn't sold out all the steaks, and I had to go downtown in Los Angeles on Alameda Street and get some dry ice.
Wow.
So it was late at night. I was going to have to sell on the weekend. It was the first time I was going to have to sell on the weekend because I hadn't sold everything out, and I had a tremendous amount that I had taken out. I did very well that day, but I just didn't sell everything.
Right.
So I had gotten the ice, and I was just tired, and there was a locomotive at the red light next to me. And one of my sales managers had once said, when you're down and you're tired, ask one more person. So I rolled down the window. I saw an elbow sticking out of the locomotive window, and I yelled out as loud as I could, do you want to buy some steaks? And a head stuck out. The engineer stuck his head out and said, what? I said, do you want to buy some steaks, boxes of steaks that you eat? And he goes, follow me. I said, yeah, right.
You're kidding.
Well, he pointed to a little station that was maybe 300 yards up the road. So when the light changed, he revved up his locomotive, and I revved up my car, and I parked in the lot, and he came out, and he said, how many boxes have you got? And I went and looked, and I had about $600 worth of stuff. And so he gave me $600 cash right on the spot, sold me out, and I didn't have to work that weekend.
No kidding. Wow.
So what is the lesson here? The lesson here is if you look around, if you open your eyes, selling is a wide open business, meaning your eyes are wide open. If you look around, you can find a prospect. And then if you contact that prospect, potentially you could turn them into a sale or a customer.
Well, first of all, what a piece of advice and what a story. I like how you roll, Ron Kule. First of all, kudos for that. And second of all, I just want you to know that you win. Okay, that is the top anecdote that's ever been told on Will Work for Patients here.
There's more to that one in the book, and there's a couple more like that in the book too.
Oh my goodness, I can't wait to read the rest of that story. Wow, that's outstanding. But what a point you're making. I agree with you because that's the kind of outside-the-box thinking that we're trying to put out here, and that's definitely how I like to roll. But I can honestly say I never had the opportunity to talk to a locomotive engineer to sell them anything. So great point. Give us more on that. What else can you tell us about prospecting?
Let's say, for instance, they're prospecting. They're doing a screening in a mall, and they have all these people walking by. It's like, really, I mean, the prospects are left and right. You just have to be willing to go up to talk to a stranger.
Sure.
Just tap them on the shoulder and say something that you would like to ask that person. Just think of something you'd like to ask that person, like, where'd you get that sweater or something like that, and let them talk.
Ron, I was just wondering what your take would be on like situations where people are scared to sort of look around them and talk to strangers and things like that. Any insight that you have from your experience on why that might be?
I really honestly think that people who are scared to talk to strangers may have a little bit of misgivings about their own product line. If you have a product or you're supporting a doctor and you really know a lot about what he does and you've spent the time, maybe had a conversation with him to clear up some points, then your confidence level comes up. And when your confidence level comes up and you know what it is that you perhaps would like to say to someone, you're going to be more easily persuading yourself to just go ahead and tap that shoulder or stand in front of a person and just say hello.
Yeah.
And that's the beginning of selling. Selling has everything to do with communicating with people and connecting with them.
Yeah.
But I think if you don't understand your product well enough, you don't have enough confidence to go do that.
Well, that's true. So I guess really what to take away from that would be sort of like really get to know your product before you even go out there.
Yeah, exactly. It's like if you have, say, 100 different items that you could know about your product and your service and your office and so forth, and you're out in the mall, you don't have to say all 100 things to people.
Of course.
But because you understand the 100 and you only say 5, let's say, to the person, you feel more comfortable doing that. And that comfort level and that confidence level will easily communicate to someone. You never have to be an overbearing, obnoxious salesperson. In fact, I don't even consider myself to be a salesperson.
Sure.
I'm more of an artist and a communicator, and I've always looked at myself that way.
Nice.
Selling was something that I did to support my writing career.
Yeah.
And so I always kept that perspective in mind. So if you're supporting your doctor, you just need to do whatever you need to do to make yourself feel comfortable, and you will therefore be more comfortable contacting people.
Yeah. So there's some premeditation here then, really, like in preparation and things like that. When you go out to sell, you really need to sort of, know your product, but sort of like in a sort of planning what's going to be said, right?
Oh, totally, because if you don't plan what you said, you might say too much. You might cut somebody's reach. There's a maxim in marketing, and that is mystery creates reach.
Yeah.
I was in the banking industry, and the thing there was I used to tell bank presidents, if someone calls you up and asks you what's the rate for a particular, say a 6-month CD, if you just answer the question with a rate, you just cut the reach. But I would teach them that you have to be courteous and answer the rate, but you could say, well, it's 5.5%. But we have other CDs that may interest you more, and I have those details with different rates and so forth. When would you like to come in? And I'd be happy to spend some time with you. And that would extend the customer's reach and actually get them in the office where you could do a better job because you were person to person.
Yeah, this is good stuff because this is
sort
of the process.
If you know what you want to say, then you'll know what's too much to say and what isn't.
Agreed. Well, I guess that sort of leads us in then, because we promised them you're going to talk a little bit about how to talk to the prospect, and obviously we sort of embarked on that already, but maybe you give us some insight about sort of your philosophy around talking to a prospect. You told me a lot of things in sort of our pre-interview. Maybe just give us your, prospecting and selling, how to talk to the prospect.
Sure, Frank. Basically, it comes down to this bedrock when it comes to selling is communication.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's a little bit more than a conversation with a couple of friends.
Yeah.
It's what I call a sales communication, and this is well defined in my book. But the sales, just overall view is sales communication has a difference, and the difference is you are working towards an agreement and an exchange of goods and services for something valuable at the end. So you're intending to create an effect on your prospect, and that is that they will become a customer, and from there, your service will build a relationship. So
Wow.
the difference between a communication per se and a sales communication is the effect that you want to create on your prospect, which you can decide ahead of time.
I couldn't have put it better. That's fantastic. So it's communication, and you understand communication, and it's a different kind of communication. You got to be focusing on the intended effect. How would you carry forward from there?
Well, the very first thing that you need to do is you really need to get the other person's attention.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't get the other person's attention, you just can't make a sale because there aren't two people there. There's some basics when it comes to selling, and that is that you have to have a prospect, you have to have a product, and you have to have somebody to sell the product.
Yeah, of course.
And communicate the product. So if you don't get the attention of the other person, and you don't put that attention under your control so that you can get it back anytime it goes away, and you don't know what attention is, then you just never establish a communication with them. And without a communication line on which to put your message, it's completely impossible to make a sale. So one of the things that I teach people in workshops that I do, that my book is based on, is exactly how to do that. And you can literally practice and exercise and improve your skill to simply get people's attention.
Outstanding.
I have a question for you, Frank.
Sure.
I'm going to turn it around. What does it look like when you have somebody's attention?
I don't know. I guess they're looking at you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You hit it right on the nose.
Mm-hmm.
You get somebody's attention, and you
Yeah.
make sure they look at you. And if you're halfway through your presentation or you're talking with them, and their attention drifts off, you just see either the eyes get glassed over or they literally go looking somewhere else.
Yeah, yeah.
You can actually stop in the middle of a sentence. I've done this. Stop right in the middle of a sentence. And the other person at some point will realize you stopped talking. And they'll look at you. And it's a great way to reestablish that you have their attention, because that's exactly, you hit it right on the nail, Frank.
I love
When
it.
people look at you, you have their attention.
That's great. That's great. I love it. I don't know how well that's going to work in a podcast. I was going to say I'd love to do that with the listeners. Just stop talking for a minute and see who notices. But I don't really have that feedback tool. but listen,
They go away on you.
Well, that's a gem right there. I mean, listeners, there's a tip that you can follow. If you feel like the person's not there with you or they're not paying attention, stop talking. See what happens. That's great. Love it. But
Or if you're on the telephone, and just ask a question.
Yeah, exactly. And if you don't get a response, obviously they're flatlining on you. But no, I mean, that's the classic thing. I mean, even in everyday conversation, I think we've all gotten the idea that, you're talking to somebody and you're like, this person isn't even here. They're somewhere else. And I'm sure many of us, if you can't look at it that way, I think we've all been in a situation where we've been somewhere else when someone was talking to us, especially a salesman. Maybe someone who was using a little too much PhD language, right?
Yeah, exactly. Somebody who really knows the top 10 list.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So I think we should put a little caveat here, shouldn't we, Ron, about controlling the prospect's attention. Realize that if you lost their attention, maybe you did something to cause it, violating one of those 10. It's not just a top 10 list; they're top 10 things to avoid, right? So there's some.
If it wasn't so funny, Frank, you'd pull out your hanky and start crying, because most of the top 10 list is literally how people are trained in sales these days. I mean, it's just the overbearing, obnoxious salesperson is usually a guy who's just been poorly trained.
I agree. Again, we live in parallel worlds here, because I'm in an industry where a lot of the scripting that I've seen for chiropractors is very, very, I don't know, it just sort of leads them to doing that and sort of robotically reading this script instead of watching what's going on in the prospect. And we're not big fans of that, but so there's some workability to it, but you do have to have an understanding of these basic concepts you're talking about, which is why I'm glad you're here. So thank you for that. I want to move you on a little bit. Want to get into something very intriguing, where you told me about steps or stages like prospects have to go through. We have something we teach in our coaching that was very similar to something you told me about, but I'm very interested from a sales standpoint, because again, we're about prospecting and then collecting people to come to your practice practice to be able to sell, but like from a salesman's point of view, I really want to hear from you on this. So tell me about this, these steps.
Well, there are 8 steps that a prospect goes through, whether or not there's a salesman even there. And I've identified these 8 steps, and in identifying them, I was basically answering 2 questions that I had for myself that I had not found in any sales books or training programs. And that was, why does a selling technique work when it does, and why doesn't it when it doesn't? And it just bugged me that I couldn't get an answer to those questions, and so I started to figure out, I better find out for myself. So I looked at what happens when, let's say a person is in a retail store, they're by themselves and they're going through the materials and they want to buy something. Maybe it's a woman and she wants to buy a dress or something. She's going to go through certain things. She's going to look to find the store. So she's looking at something. That's like her attention is there.
Sure.
And then she's going to look at the materials in the store, and she's going to be thinking about certain things. And there's a whole process that people go through. And I just basically attached certain words to them, and then I looked up those words very strongly, and I found that not only did this work to improve my sales, but I started to teach others the same thing, and it really worked. And then lo and behold, I happened to find something that was from the advertising field. There was a man who had written, who became a member of the Advertising Hall of Fame as a result of this formula that he worked on how to write ad copy. And his steps were almost exactly the same steps that I had worked out.
No kidding.
And in the book that alluded to this, it actually pointed out that his formula crossed over into the sales field and became really popular in America. It was like a meteor. It was like, bam, big popularity, big blazing trail, and then it kind of like disappeared when there was more of a psychology influence came in on sales and kind of made that simple formula disappear. So there I had the basis for the 8 steps and how that they're really proven. And the other thing, too, is that there are 2 aspects to sales. That this is something I'd really, like a little gem that I'd like to give your listeners.
Great.
Most people think that they're actually selling something, when in actual fact you're just bringing your prospect to become a buyer. Because as a statement that I made in the book, the seller sells, but the buyer buys. If you think back on the things that you've bought, whether there was a salesman there or not, you bought them. You didn't get sold those things, because in the end you had to make a decision to buy them, and the salesman couldn't do that for you.
That's so simple.
Yeah, there's like an illusion of selling, which is I'm going to sell somebody. And then there's the reality of selling. The actuality of it is that the person actually buys something. So if you know how to take a salesperson, you know how to take your prospect, through a communication to a point where they will actually reach for what you have, then you know exactly when to close them. And of course, in my training, I teach people exactly how to close them.
No kidding. I just can't get over the simplicity. So happy that you're joining me praying at the altar of simplicity here, because I'm such a big fan of that. And I know this sounds a little funny, and I'm not even exaggerating, though. It was to the point where we had to come up with a slogan for the company a little while ago, and we came up with making simplicity out of chiropractic marketing complexity. And I think you hit it right on the head. Because where you said there was an introduction of complexity somewhere. At some point it was a simple approach that this guy had, and then all of a sudden these complexities got introduced and it sort of disappeared. So this is sort of, I guess, what you tend to undo in the people you work with.
It's exactly what I do. The correct positioning of how I train people and how I've always sold, and I was I was either in the number 1 spot or the number 1 to 3 spot in every company I've ever worked with internationally, in marketing, selling, different types of selling, door-to-door, in home, in offices, you name it, I did it. And I was always at the top, and the reason for it was because of the basic principles that I was able to identify early on in my career, which I then taught others, and I realized everything we've been talking about. Wow. So it comes down to that simplicity. It's an undercut. It's just something it's just more fun. Yeah. My big thing is fun. If you can't have fun doing it, do something else. So if you're going to have to sell, might as well get down to the simplicities.
Yeah.
And in fact, Da Vinci, to show how far back this goes, Leonardo da Vinci stated that simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. So if you want to sell really artfully and really sophisticated, you have to sell really simply, and people love that, and it becomes easier.
Wow. So profound, and I want to thank you for making me right. Do you hear that, folks? You heard it right here. Ron Kule just validated what I've been saying for a long time. I didn't even know Da Vinci said that. I got to go look that up now. I'm going to put his quote on my website or something. Ron Kule, you just earned my endorsement. You heard it right here first. I endorse Ron Kule in his sales program officially. It so aligns with what we're trying to do here, and just that subject of simplicity right there. We're looking for unscripted simplicity when we go out and we do this stuff, and you just hit it right on the head. So you also do workshops and training and things like that, and so I'd like you to maybe tell us a little bit overall about sort of your technology and the book versus the workshops and sort of how you approach.
Okay, I can do that very easily. First of all, in any good marketing plan, you have to identify your target audience, and I've identified 3. There are people who prefer to train themselves in sales. Mm-hmm. So in my book, Listen More, Sell More, I have a complete what's called a check sheet, which is simply a format that allows you to go step by step and learn more and more as you go, and mark off your completion of each step as you go. So if you had to go away and come back, you know exactly how far you went. You don't have to keep hunting for it. It's a simple way to take yourself through the entire presentation and learning process of learning how to sell. That's one audience. The second audience would be staff trainers, in-house corporate trainers, who want train their staffs on how to sell. So they can do that with my book because of that complete course, step-by-step course in the book, and all of the text and the definitions and so forth are in the book. The third are my workshops. Mm-hmm. On contract, I will go anywhere in the world. I love to travel. I've been in 35 countries. I've done talks in 17 countries. And so I can go anywhere on contract, deliver right in the office to the staffs, and they get the benefit of all the expertise and the 39 years that I have behind me. So I use my book as a text for that.
Brilliant. And then, so it sounds like by those stats, half the time you're traveling, you're talking or training. About 50%.
Yeah, the other time I'm having fun. Well, it's all fun, actually.
Yeah, well, that's true. It is all fun. That's true. Good clarification. Wow, brilliant. So there's even simplicity in your methods there.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's just, I think we're going to put period to it with that. Thanks so much for, first of all of that. There were way more gems in this episode than I thought there were going to be. And folks, I got to tell you, it's highly worth it to read this book at least. If not, contact the man himself. There's no way we could have taken up these 8 steps in one podcast, and I got to tell you, we wouldn't have done it justice here in this forum. So, again, Ron, very sincerely and not jokingly, you definitely earned my endorsement here. It's very well done what you're doing, and I just want to commend you on it. And this is also why I wanted to forward you along to my listeners, because I'm just in love with the way you're doing this. So kudos to you.
Well, thank you so much, Frank, and I'm very open to anybody asking questions.
We'll obviously put you on social media as we normally do, and we're going to get to that in a moment. Let me recap over everything, and maybe you can assist me on the recap a little bit. So we started out with how to find a prospect, and let me just sum up a little bit that from what you told us, that you got to look around you. There's patients everywhere. Folks, if you remember one of the premiere episodes of this podcast, Get One New Patient a Day, remember that one? It's still our all-time most listened to podcast episode, although I think that's about to change after today's episode, Ron. But we talked about being able to just find a patient anywhere, and I really like Ron's viewpoint here, but look around you and just realize your comfort zone is bigger than you think it is, and that you can talk to strangers. There was something about knowing your product, that if you don't know your product, this is when nervousness and anxiety and stress can come into the sales process and the prospecting prospect, and then really knowing what you're going to say and not talking about everything. Ron, is there some kind of point you want to also add to that?
Yeah, you did really well there. Know your product, gain confidence, decide what you want to say, go find somebody to say it to, and be curious. Be curious of what they might reply with. I mean, don't be afraid of it. Just be curious about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
People are interesting. If you think yourself, if you think I think everybody thinks they're interesting.
Yeah.
Well, maybe the other guy thinks that too. So you ask him why he thinks he's interesting. Ask him unusual questions, and people love it.
That's great. Absolute gems right there. You have it right from Ron Kule. So then we moved into how to talk to a prospect. You talked about how selling is a communication process. I love that. And that sales communication is definitely different from just regular casual communication, in that there's an intended effect that you want to create from that. And that as part of that process, probably what I would say, and this is my addition, probably the most important part of that process would be to start out by having someone's attention and then holding it. Ron, did I sum it up okay, or is there more recap you want to add?
Yeah, it's that, and then that's only one step. There's remember there's 8 steps, but I've developed exclusive training drills that specifically address the skills that you need that are vital for each of those steps. So you can literally, they're what I call unlimited drills, which means that you can just keep doing them and doing them and doing them and getting better and better and better. You don't have to, there's no threshold after which you don't get any better. It's all built in the way I put it into together.
8 steps. The 8 steps, well, they sort of spoke for themselves. I'm just going to sort of leave it on that. He went through that there are 8 steps every prospect takes to buy. That's a process that I believe you definitely need to know about, and that there's an illusion of sales and a reality of sales, and that converting the prospect into the buyer. Ron, give us sort of a 1-sentence recap point on that most important point.
The most important point is to identify when is it the right time to actually try to close the sale. What you open with a communication in the beginning must be closed at the end. And this is where most people fail. Once they get past the idea that they can't communicate and they're communicating well, they just can't identify when is the right time to actually close the sale. And that's the key point.
Love it. Absolutely great recap. Folks, that is it. There is the entire episode in a nutshell. Thank you, Ron, for that recap. I appreciate it. Now for the last word. Who gets the last word? I do. After all, it's my show. So what should we take away from today's podcast? If anything, I sincerely hope that you take to heart one thing, and that is, I'm going to use the word perspective, okay? A perspective, patience, perspective, looking at things from their point of view, like things like their attention, things like what kind of stages they sort of need to go through to be able to make a decision. This isn't just about you talking and touting your product, okay? This is about you being able to go out there and confront seeing people, talking to strangers, and actually once getting them to volunteer to sit with you and listen to what you have to say, actually sort of giving them the courtesy of sort of looking through their eyes and really caring enough about them to understand them in a much better way than you've ever been able to understand anyone. And to be able to then use that to not only help them, but to help yourself to make the sale, and that helps everybody. And we know what we're doing here. We know how grassroots it is. Even what you do every day in your office, you're just grassroots effort to creating health on the planet, and it starts with communication. It's the only way we're going to get this job done. So that's the last word for the day. Hey, wouldn't it be amazing if we look back on this moment and we said, this is where it all changed? Will today's episode be the turning point of the game for you? Pick any of the topics we've done, especially Ron Kule and his magical Technicolor sales coat. Take your pick. We have such a collection growing here of episodes. Let's make this a turning point where it all changed. Okay, Ron, we want to put our audience in contact with you. I am going to blitz you all over social media, first of all, so we'll have links to your website and stuff like that. But let's tell the listeners a couple of direct things about how to contact you, how to get in touch with your product, or let's say your book, Listen More, Sell More.
Okay, in order to catch me on email, it's simply listenmoresellmore@gmail.com.
I should have known. It was simple. So
yeah, it's simple.
Okay, and then you're on Facebook, yes?
On Facebook, it's facebook.com/better, easier selling technology.
BEST, I love it. And then I found also in Facebook, if you search Listen More, Sell More as 4 separate words, the page also comes up under that. So I'll just put in that. And then I always put our guests on the spot here with their product to do some sort of incentive offer for people just who listened to the show today. So maybe you can give something, yeah?
Yeah, I've worked out in my mind a really good special for your listeners, and that is My book retails for $19.99 plus tax. Larger organizations who buy 21 books or more get a good price. So I'm going to offer your listeners a price for no matter how many volumes that they buy. So if they want to buy one book or if they want to buy 25 books, they'll get it for $11.99.
Oh, there you go. Wow, that's nearly half off. So I love it. All right, well, thanks for that. I normally pressure people to give me more, but that's plenty for me. Okay, well, good. Thank you for that offer, and I'm sure the listeners are going to appreciate it, and we'll make sure that we publish that on social media. The next episode, well, again, it's not decided which. I know I've been saying that a lot lately, but we have a long growing list. We've got about 10 guests lined up just for the next 2 weeks. A lot of shows to record, and I have all I can do just to keep up with that list. It grows every day. I just added a couple more today. But some topics coming up, SEO and internet marketing. I know you're really interested in this. And we also have extra special one on communication that you're absolutely going to love, and there's so much more coming. So we've got special treats planned for you. Just stay tuned and just keep watching for that next episode. It'll be a blockbuster, I promise. I will work for patients. Incidentally, so will Ron Kule with a bullet. So will you? Come on, guys, let's do this, huh? Ron Kule, I want to profusely thank you for being here today. It was such a pleasure to have you on the show, and I think you were such a hit. I think we're going to ask you back. So I'm hoping maybe you want to come back at some point. We can't thank Ron enough for being here. Thanks again, Ron. We really appreciate it. Don't forget about our free resources. Our list is growing. Go to the bottom of willworkforpatients.com. You'll see some resources there. The bottom of screeningexperts.com, a growing list of resources, links to guests we've had on the show. We now have the YouTube videos for free for you. A link to our blog. You can go directly there at chiropracticmarketingadvice.com. There's a lot of good advice there. We're going to actually start writing articles about different things that we've had on the show. So it's getting very, very exciting. Listen, subscribe, download. willworkforpatients.com. We'll also have instructions on how to download. I'm personally endorsing BeyondPod for Android right now because I use it. I do like using the podcasting app on iTunes, the podcast app, and you can go directly from RSS feed. Remember, this is a grassroots effort to make a chiropractic world like we all want. So let's make every episode count, huh? I know I can count on you. So, my friends, we've come to the end of an intriguing episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. On behalf of myself, the intensely skilled Ron Kule, our announcer Michelle, and the rest of the Screening Experts crew, I thank you so very much for joining us, and we'll see you soon for yet another stupendous episode of Will Work for Patients. So long.
Be sure to subscribe and share. Will Work for Patients has been brought to you courtesy of Screening Experts, bringing unscripted simplicity to chiropractic marketing complexity. Today's episode, copyright Screening Experts LLC, musical score composed and arranged by Frank Sardella ASCAP. For more information, visit screeningexperts.com.